Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Sapna Rise. I'm Natasha Doshi, and we have someone very special with us today. We have Miss Rituparna Chatterjee, and we're discussing her book today, The Water Phoenix, a memoir on childhood abuse, healing, and forgiveness. Welcome to Sapna Rise, Rituparna.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. Sapna is such a legacy, so it feels really nice to be here. Thank you.
I'm so glad. And after reading your book, I must tell you, uh, I have the utmost respect and admiration for you, and I would really like to salute you for penning down this book and sending out such a nice, strong message to everybody out there.
Thank you. Yeah, we need more stories. So people who are abused, it's such an isolating experience. I think they're the only one. That's not true at all. It's the story of millions. So we just need more stories.
Can you tell us a little something about the book?
So The Water Phoenix is a magic realism memoir, although a review just came out that said it need not be called magic realism but the thing is it's about, growing up in small town India of the 80s and the 90s. All the magic of it, there's peacocks, monkeys, panthers, owls, all of that. There's a lot of fun, but all of this goes simultaneously with the inner life of a child who's abused, and nobody can tell.
Hmm.
And that's it. This book, it says that it's about the silent inner life that children lead, how you grow up with it, because it takes a long time. It takes years for a kid to even realize they have been abused. What abuse is? We have a word for it now. We did not before. So I mean, kids very young know now what it means. So the book it runs in parallel. It's not just all darkness there, but it's also about how how it affects, how abuse colors pretty much every single thing in our lives, from just on a school morning to your friendships, your relationships, your inability to get through exams no matter how hard you try. It's just constant. It's more than a shadow,
Right.
because a shadow's not there at night. It's just there. It lives within you, and I've called it the tentacle because, like I said, the child did not know what it was. It took a long time to process it, decades actually.
Hmm.
So, and this is so common. It's cookie cutter. It's almost like it came out of a factory. Everybody I talk to, same story. Different, the way they feel is very similar.
Right.
So what's different about this book is that it's about healing, that there is a way out of it,
Okay.
and but the journey is just as important. So yeah, that's what it is. A magic realism memoir of childhood, forgiveness, and healing,
Wow.
and freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds really beautiful.
Thank you.
And you're a writer, you're a journalist, you happen to be a columnist, you write a lot of articles, and you've also written a book earlier. How did this book come to you, and what were you actually, was this on the agenda since the beginning?
It wasn't. It's so interesting you ask that, because everyone thinks, I had an objective, but as you can tell, this book is very dreamy. It's got a, very flowy state. So those things cannot be planned. What happened is my last book on the life of the actor Nawazuddin Siddiqui, An Ordinary Life, ran into a lot of trouble and controversy. And it was a very traumatic time, a different trauma, very traumatic time, because we all got sued, all of that. And so I kind of went into my shell and I wrote a lot of poetry to kind of be able to process it. And I've been writing since I was 6 or 7 for myself. So, so it's just something I turned to because I was a very lonely child. There was nobody I felt whom I could open up to like that. And so writing saved me in many ways. And so I turned to it, and I turned to poetry. And I was trying to work on a novel and it was going nowhere. So I finished 2 volumes of poetry, but my poetry is very intimate. I've chosen never to publish it.
Okay.
It's just so, and then suddenly this book just burst out. and its energy just took over. And I could have finished it in 3 months, but I have a small kid and I also work at a school. So that really took up a lot. And everything was very happy while some of the things in this book were not. So then it took about, I think, 5.5 or 6 months, slightly less than 6 months to finish it fully because of all these delays. Otherwise, it would have been 3 months. So it wasn't planned. I also wanted it to be autofiction and not a memoir because I've already written a memoir on an actor. My column is a memoir, kind of, because it's about my life. So I'm a reluctant memoirist, but everyone said that that this book cannot be fiction because it is about healing, and we have no such stories. Actually, I don't know of any. And now we have another one. It's All in My Head by Manjari Indukar, which has also come out around the same time. I haven't read it, but those are. I mean, I think these stories are beginning to come out now, and it's very, very important uh, to tell people there is a way out. So yeah, we need more of these books.
Absolutely. Light at the end of the tunnel. This somehow gives a lot of people hope to not only come out with their stories, because I feel like in India, especially, stories of abuse are not really told and discussed. They're almost suppressed, either by themselves or by the family. It's not common for somebody to come out and voice out what they've gone through. So this not only gives them that courage to kind of voice out what they've gone through, but this also gives them hope to life, like to just
Yeah.
live life.
That's so interesting you mention it, because since this book has come out, and it has just come out, I am inundated with messages like a tsunami. I'm like drowning in these messages of people, and so many men. That's the shocking part. We think it's just little girls, but it's as many little boys. And it's heartbreaking because they are the opposite. They're the survivor, fighter, warrior. That thing that everything this book is, again, this book is about breaking down,
Yeah.
because only from the ashes can the phoenix rise. You have to burn down. So it's just so heartbreaking. And all these boys are telling me, talk about us. Nobody talks about us. And I'm really trying not to tear up here, because I have a little boy, and I have and he's actually walking across right now.
That's so
uh,
sweet.
I have done everything in my life possible so that he has an environment which emotionally supports him, that it's okay to have to be afraid of everything, so that you face it. That's the only way, to not suppress, basically.
Right.
um, so yeah, it's heartbreaking. And also, not many, but at least two editors have told me, we were abused ourselves, we cannot bear to read this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, at least read it.
Yeah.
But so people are that suppressed, they're so afraid.
Right.
And yet they're saying, oh, you're so brave. And I'm like, it's not about me. And at the same time, there are people who finished it in 24 hours and have gotten back and told me that I am now inspired to go and confront the person, because almost all of these cases are somebody you trust. How else will you have access to a small child?
Right.
Or so maybe it's the anger that has come out, maybe it's the breakdown that they needed. But everybody who has gotten back to me so far has told me they feel very changed afterwards, because there is a way out, and it was very cathartic for them.
Yeah.
And it's just yeah, it's, I don't know, I'm speechless, honestly, about what can you say.
And sometimes it's just comforting to know that you're not the only one, and there are so many out there who have been through this, and you kind of feel supported at that point.
Yes, yes. uh, that's exactly why we need more such stories, because even in families, if people would open up maybe to their mothers, it's hushed down. Remember this movie Monsoon Wedding? It's not fiction,
Yeah.
but the ending, Mira Nair's Monsoon Wedding, I don't know, have you seen it? It
I
came
haven't
out
watched it.
many years ago. It was about child abuse in this upper middle class family, but it ended with everybody, Nasiruddin Shah and everybody siding on the side of the abuse victim, and saying no to the, and kind of shunning the family elder, who was very supportive in every way, financially included. That never happens in real life, but we needed that. That was the only story, but there was so much else going on that was just one narrative. Um, and yeah, we don't have, I don't know anybody who has done that in real life. And I've lost count of the number of people who've opened up. So it's just really sad. But I think talking about this, having more stories will hopefully change that.
This is a memoir. So, was it painful to relive these memories while writing it down? And it must have taken a lot of courage for you to actually put pen to paper.
So this is a question I get asked a lot, but the difference is that I had already healed. So it wasn't painful for me to revisit. It wasn't cathartic for me. I had already gone through all of that. Probably also why the book was done so fast. Um, and the other thing is, all types of writing, even if you're writing fiction, there is there is an autobiographical element in everything, even if it's a separate character.
Yeah.
Um, and so everything is painful because we cannot avoid it as writers, as artists. It's about connecting with the human experience. So you have to be open to experiencing every single emotion on the spectrum of, on the human emotion spectrum. So yeah, I'm not one to shun pain at all. At all. And that's what this book is about. And probably that's why when people meet me, they are pretty shocked to hear that it was there was a dark childhood to it, and that is testimony. The healing, is, and long story short, wasn't at all painful for me.
I'm glad you've healed and you've come out of your experience. And I think it has affected you in so many ways where maybe it's a positive change and it's made you who you are today.
Yes, absolutely. It has. And I think more than anything else in the world, I treasure my freedom. That's because it has been so hard won. Um, and it wasn't, when you grow up, you realize that at the end, what's chaining you down is your own association with that. As a child, you were vulnerable. You didn't have any options. Today, you do. So reach out for help in whatever way you can. Once we do, it's pretty surprising how many people will show up.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Why did you pick the title The Water Phoenix? Is there any particular association or reason?
So at the back is this girl here, this little girl staring at the phoenix, who is in a bunch of leaves. So my dad was posted in a tiny town called Nandurbar. He was in the railways, and I grew up all over India. And there was a lot of nature there. Nobody has heard of Nandurbar except briefly. It's short. It became infamous rather, for bird flu. But apart from that, there was nothing else. So I used to chase this peacock from the school to my house, and it would go up to this tree.
Okay.
You see the leaves. It was the
Yeah.
people tree,
Okay.
and it flew up, and it was, it would just get lost in this lake of sunlight, um, everywhere. So I thought that it lives over there. And then I was reading way ahead of my age. I was a very, very advanced reader. That was the only thing that I was good at. So um, there was, so I knew by then what a phoenix is. So I thought, oh, it's a phoenix. And then if you stare at sunlight through trees, you will notice that it shifts a little bit. So I thought it's a liquid lake. So I thought, oh, it's a water phoenix because it lived there. I was so fascinated. So that's one of my earliest memories. And therefore the title The Water Phoenix. And I was really lucky. This artist has done such a great job, and my publisher was so generous, so accommodative to, we worked on the cover quite a bit with ideas and stuff
It's a
to
beautiful
get that.
it's a beautiful illustration, and I think it's a beautiful thought as well. You were so young and tender, and you actually had a pretty strong imagination back then.
Yeah, thank you. I think every kid is born with it. It's just when we decide to tell them this is an imaginary friend, this is real, um, this is focus on studies, be logical, and then it slowly goes away. But because I didn't have a mother, my mother died when I was very young, and I barely knew her because since I was 3, she was in hospitals, and then she passed away when I was 5. What I mean is that I was left on my own. There was no grown up telling me that much stuff. So my imagination stayed intact, and it saved my life then. It saved me every day. Yeah, it's something we're all born with.
So the book talks about the coconut water craving railway princess, as you call yourself. throughout the
Yeah.
chapters, you were a young girl and you had a big decision ahead in your life at a very early age of choosing between your hostel life and going back and staying with your father, but you in fact picked staying back at the hostel. So you know throughout the book I sense this sort of loneliness, but at the same time, as I said, there's so much uh, self sufficiency. There's a lot of I could sense some smartness, some maturity, and obviously you've practically raised yourself, and that comes across so beautifully in the book where you've taught yourself number of things at any situation. So, how was it for you to be the coconut water craving railway princess?
First, I really wanted to thank you because you're such a sensitive reader to have pointed that out that I raised myself. This is something I've been telling since I was little, and none of my relatives even believe me. But I think if they read it, then they might get it. What I mean is that our internal lives are very different. We may live with people, but who knows who we are? That's why books help, because books are so intimate. And memoirs, fiction, especially stuff like that, they're so intimate. You reach a layer, even if you're reading about others, you reach a layer within yourself that you might not otherwise. And I had to raise myself, and as you know, the reason I chose not to go with my father, even though the irony of it all, I ran away
Yeah.
from the hostel because I was so lonely. And then I realized, oh, but I don't know when I'll get abused. I didn't even know what it meant, but I didn't know when I'll get attacked, because all this time you see me, there's a lot of nature in it. I'm just, and just hanging out, doing my thing, being a really easy kid when I think about it, because now I have a kid, also fairly easy, but you know, not no tantrums, not bothering anybody, really reading. The grown up can have their own life, all of that. But even then, it was very hard. So I had to choose for my own safety to stay back. And you're right, it made me very, very self sufficient. In a very different way. So most of abuse victims go all anger and survivor. So their self-sufficiency comes from, they may hold great positions in whatever field they choose. They may financially do very well in their careers and all of that. Mine is an emotional sufficiency. My friends make fun of me because I treasure my solitude so much. Quarantine has been amazing for me. And I'm like, oh, I could live even in a deeper quarantine, because my
Yeah.
whole life has been quarantine. I've been on my own pretty much internally. There may be people around, it didn't matter. So it helped me a lot. But I guess it's what we make out of it. All our experiences shape us. Some people are saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But for me, it wasn't. I don't think it was strength, but it was, I got myself, even if there's nobody else. So yeah.
And from the way I look at it and from what I've read, it also made you so sensitive to people around you. You could see things that others couldn't. So, there are instances that you've narrated about picking a certain friend because you could sense something from their eyes, or, even those little incidences of you helping animals. Like there was a rat that was in a bucket, and, you actually helped
Yeah,
that
yeah.
rat, which a little child wouldn't actually do. So, you saw the beauty and sensitivity in so many plants and animals around you. So, I mean, that could be a positive take
Yes, it is.
take away from the book.
Yeah, and again, you're such a sensitive reader. Thank you, because I've been, giving so many interviews, and these two little things, no, nobody has noticed them. So much of a book is about what the reader also takes from it. And yeah, I always say, gentleness is the greatest strength there is, and sensitivity is a superpower. And we're now talking about it. I think people are just starting to see how we need to make our men that way. So I had no choice, right? I was so tuned in, and I get overwhelmed very easily because I'm so sensitive. I'm picking up on all the stuff that's invisible in plain sight, as to
Yeah.
quote from the book. It goes on till today, and now we have a term for it, empath or whatever. People say. So I'm picking up on all kinds of energies that also makes life very rich. where somebody might get bored. My kid keeps saying, I've never heard you say I'm bored. And I'm like, I cannot be bored. The whole world is so entertaining. And, Krishnamurti, the philosopher, talks about this. Have you listened to a tree? Not to the sound of the wind whistling through the tree, but have you really listened to a tree? And I'm like, oh my God, there you go. The whole world is talking. So it made me very empathetic. And I think I realized all of this only in my 30s because when I was little, I was obviously told, oh, she's too sensitive. And, luckily I had my books. Otherwise, I don't know what I would have done. No friends, not good at sport, barely managing through, grades eventually, all of that. But something happened after the Panther attack. A lot of people started telling me all their problems. This includes grown-ups with their marriage issues. I'm 11. It's insane. I think it's what you're saying. I think it's the energy that they could sense. And from then, people started telling me about their abuse stories. From around 11 to 13 is when it started, and in great detail. And very often, they didn't know that I also, had been abused because I was just holding space for them and listening. Um, so it's interesting how all of that invited a whole bunch of people to open up and probably resulted in this book. Also in the type of writing that I do, it's very intimate, it's slower. You know the pace is not slow, but there's a lot of presence. There's no rushing over a certain thing. So all of it, I owe everything to my childhood. So yeah.
I think your experiences shape you today.
Yes, absolutely, all of us.
Speaking about your writing style, it was so beautifully written, and there are so many voices that you've mentioned in the book. That time and again in most of our chapters, we come across these terms: sense of relief, taste of terror, voice of reason. And there are small little notes that you've made whenever there's an important incident that you've come across, important lessons. And there are about 25 or so. And, those are your takeaways from your life. And
Yes.
this is coming from a toddler who's just, uh, who is just abused. So, how did all of this happen? And especially the writing, the tone of writing, if I must ask, these voices.
And thank you again. Brilliant question. It goes back to your last question about all of the sensitivity, and we perceive the world through our physical senses. So, because, like I said, I didn't have a mommy to tell me this is this, that is that, and I had a list because my memories of her was so few, and I had so much time on my own, and there were no distractions, TV and all that. Very, very little. Only I remember He-Man on Sunday mornings. It's pretty much all I remember back then. So there was so much time that automatically, I think, put a lot of us in a meditative state, slightly Zen Buddhist way of being, one thing at a time, not 200 things. All of this contributes to what we now say in meditations. You try to focus on one sound, or mindfulness. Life was like that. So I only had a way to process. So there's a taste of terror. There's a way of, everyone would say, oh, maa ke haath ka khana. But somebody's mother's comfort food is another child's idea of terror. So, we used to get this mustard oil massage by the first person who abused me. And I could not tolerate mustard. I'm almost shivering even now, until 3 years ago. And it took me that long to figure out. And I'm Bengali. We are known for mustard fish curries, mustard oil. I'm married to a Punjabi where they also have mustard, sarson ka saag, and they use mustard oil. So mustard oil and mustard is actually a part of both of these cultures. And I didn't understand what was going on. But then while writing this book, I figured it out. That even though I was so tuned in. So it goes back to when we are kids, we there's nothing logical. We don't analyze things. We learn through how we feel. And how do we feel? How do we process it? Through sense of smell, sense of touch, what we see, the five senses. So all of these were the only things I had. If I had mothers and aunts who would play a big role, they would be. But these were the people who taught me things, people, if you will. So they were my characters. So they were my humans, if you will, yeah, so I could have gotten lost in all of that, and in many ways, those are symptoms of schizophrenia also, when gone a bit too much in the opposite direction, and that also comes up in the book later. But luckily, I didn't go that far. So we need to pay attention to how our kids, how our pets process, how animals process. Do you have a dog?
No,
Uh,
unfortunately, I don't.
so any sound will be like that, or Diwali is hell for them because of all of that. So I think I related more to them because I felt they processed the world like I did, except that I could read and write, and that's one extra thing I had.
There's a lot of mention of the book Alice in Wonderland.
Yes.
So, was that your favorite novel while growing up, or is there like a certain reference that you've taken from the book to write your book?
So there were, like I said, I was an avid reader. There are a few other books also mentioned, Gulliver's Travels. But Alice in Wonderland, I started reading very early, and it's one of those strange books that I first did a comic book version of, like an Amar Chitra Katha, but a smaller one. Then a bigger comic book, graphic novel, whatever you want to call it, version of. Then an abridged one. So as I grew, I had a different version of the same story.
Hmm.
And I felt I'm just like this girl. She's all alone. She's in this world. She's, all in a, even I'm in a white frock here. And she's in that, a very proper frock. And I just felt the similarities were insane, and she's going through one horror after another, and it's a horror story. As I grew up, I realized, oh my god, this is a horror story. There's no way it would be published today. And the Queen of Hearts goes off with their heads, so there's grown-ups literally giving orders for murder, and she's supposed to behave. It's really, really scary, and there's nobody to help her out, and she's figuring it out on her own, and she's very self-sufficient, like you said. And and she also, I guess, raises herself, although it's a shorter time period. And I felt I really connected. In a way, I felt like, oh my god, this character gets me. So, and she didn't have time for what was going through it, but I find it very abusive. And at the same time, there were magical characters like the Cheshire Cat and the Caterpillar, all of whom I wrote letters to and all that. So it grew up with me. It was like a best friend, a sister, whatever you want to call it. Um, yeah. So it comes up, and there are quotes in it. I have believed six things. I'm out of it now because I'm working on my new novel, so
Okay.
I'm finding it hard to remember. But I have changed 6 times since breakfast, and there are all of these things. I think it's there in
Yeah,
the acknowledgement.
just picking that out.
I knew who I was this morning, but I have changed a few times since then. So things like that. You may have noticed I'm not all there by myself. So that's the Cheshire Cat, saying it in a cute way. And I felt that with the tentacle would come up any minute. And those are all the triggers. It's no use going back to yesterday because I was a different person then. And the biggest one, I'm not crazy. My reality is just different from yours. So all of it makes sense now that you have read the book. And that is, the spirit of great art, how we can all relate. It's complete fantasy, and yet it was very much my reality.
Also, time and again, you've mentioned how you were scared of sports, and due to what life threw at you, but there's a continuous mention of how you skipped the games period and how there was always an aversion towards sports.
Mhm. Sports are about being in the body, and there are many times, I think there's a line in which I had left my body. Could such a body be trusted?
Yeah.
So I didn't want to have to do anything with my body because my body was screaming like it always does when we have anxiety, when we have panic attacks. It's our body that screams. I feel it here. Somebody else may feel it in their stomach or somewhere else. I just didn't want to have to do anything with the body. Now I realize it now, but back then it was just I'm bad at it. Kids made fun of me because I was scared of ball being thrown at me. I still am somewhat. I mean, I can somewhat catch it, but it doesn't matter now. I'm more free as a grown up
Yeah.
than as a kid. And kids are not kind. Indian society is notorious for making fun of everybody. I don't find that humorous, but it's a lot kinder here. in California, at least. And that helped a lot in my healing as well. But very recently did I get into, recently as in I'm talking about, the journey of a lifetime, only the last 5 years or so did I get into yoga. Otherwise, I just didn't want to have to do anything with my body. That's why imagination books, you're escaping. And now I'm realizing how much we need to be in our bodies as well. That's our vessel, that's our temple. So I have a greater respect for it now. What I, all the wellness stuff that they talk about.
Speaking of body, there's something that I noticed, which was something that uh, I don't know the right word, but I was so stunned when I read this. A 6-year-old working out earth shattering theories and reasoning with herself for the wrongdoing of others. You
Mhm.
you almost left your body every time you went through abuse. So you disconnected from yourself at the age of 6, and you had that understanding, and you had the epiphany at that time where you could disconnect yourself at
Mhm.
that particular moment.
So, psychiatrists, therapists who deal with abuse victims will tell you this is very common. They have gone off, they have left their body. And that's why schizophrenia symptoms of it is pretty common, because it just kept on going. One of the tiny reasons, I'm not, I haven't studied it academically, but I have lived it. So I always say I'm not a therapist, thank God. But um, so it's very common to disassociate from there, because think about it. What happens today when a normal person feels anxious? They will go and have tea, coffee, cigarette. What are we trying to do? We're trying to run away. And I always call it the fitness epidemic, because of course it's great for you, but so many people I know, they're like, running saved my life, but you're running away from a lot.
Yeah.
And that's important to do at some point. That's also disassociating, because modern life, I don't know, I find it extremely traumatic. We're so cut off from nature. The opening chapter of my book, I feel that was so idyllic and so perfect and so heavenly. If we could all have, be that tuned in with nature, we would see how little we actually need. And so I strive for that, and I think I've managed to get a lot of it now, somewhere. And now I am able to stay in my body, because I'm aware, I'm constantly watching. That's also, there are livers and there are watchers in the
Yeah.
book. So the body is how we translate every feeling, whether we have been, the person has been abused or not.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the only way. And I think the reason I had all of those near death experiences, all those creatures I was seeing, is because I was so tuned in. So all the mystical experiences that happened were only because of that. So alone, so quiet, that
Right.
then the whole universe starts talking to you.
Absolutely. And you even described the people tea to be your first guardian angel
Yes.
out for you. So,
Yeah. One of the things that did trigger off when I started writing this book, and I did not know what it would be, I used to always think, people will have conversations, and sometimes I would ask them, what's your earliest memory? I try to have different, conversations instead of, hi, how are you, how's work? Sometimes um, and very few people remembered anything. But there are a couple of them who even remember being breastfed by their mothers, or back then. So, but most people did not remember. And my earliest memory is of waking up in the middle of the night and staring at the people tree out of this window, and it was so giant. I think it appeared more giant because I was so little. I don't think it was actually as giant as, I mean, it's a big tree. But so I was so mesmerized, and it looked perfect no matter how the weather was. I saw grown-ups, get angry, you this, that, but the people we just look really solid and stable, and not reactionary like that, and yet changing. So it was very fascinating.
also, the characters in your book, are there any fictional characters, or most of them are inspired from your real
I've
life?
changed everybody's names,
Okay.
except for some stray dogs. I mean,
David,
their names. Yeah, Ram Jhadogi, Ram Pyari, Ram Dulari. I couldn't come up with better name than that. Like, who named them that? I have no idea. So, all of those names except for that, everybody, and I think Lalu and Kalu, except for those dogs' names, everybody names have been changed. Uh, None of them are fictional,
Okay.
but so much of it is what happened to me internally. If you've noticed the human characters, most of them are just props.
Yeah.
It's all these, you mentioned them, right? Voice of reason, comfort, smell of relief, taste of terror, all of those things are more real, uh, in plain sight, two in one, get to together. These ways of comprehending the world were more real than human characters, because it's so isolating. Everything is inside you. None of them are fictional. And yeah,
It's a
but
beautiful way of writing.
thank you. Thank you. And again, I couldn't predict it. It's just, I don't plot, I don't outline. I have tried and failed at it miserably.
Okay.
Now I just write sentence by sentence, and it's really like opening, a treasure chest. I don't know what the next sentence will be. So it's that's, I think, that comes across.
Has your family read this book? Did they?
That is so I think my dad has to still get a copy. He's very old world. He's not on the internet or anything, so I don't know how he's going to get a copy in quarantine. But apart from that, my family, unlike most Bengali families, they are not big readers. I'm also not close to anybody as much, as you can see. I mean, I'm somewhat close to my cousins, but uh, I've never seen any of them read. I think that's probably why I felt even more, like I was on my own to read. So I don't know if they will, but I hope they don't. If I hope that instead of judging or anything, they actually read it before, commenting, because that's what happened with my last book. It went into a spiral in the media because, oh, there's this big celebrity, whatever, we'll get clicks, TRPs, whatever it is. And nobody read it, because people who did read it, they came back and they were like, uh, you know, it was just 1.5 pages. We didn't see what the controversy is all about. So I hope the same thing. I hope people actually read it, because there's no offense to them. It's not even about them, really. But I think my dad really wants to read it. And I mentioned him in the acknowledgements. He's been very honest. So I don't think he's going to be surprised. But he doesn't know the level of the abuse. I didn't tell him. You saw that, the invisible burdens children bear. So, yeah.
Do you think memoir as a genre is unaccepted and untapped in India? Because it's fairly common in the West, but when it comes to India, where we don't have too many authors yet who write memoirs, and I think people are not too comfortable with accepting the truth so openly about somebody that you already know. So, what's your thought on this genre?
Um, so this is such an important question. Thank you for bringing it up. So my book was going to be autofiction, and then, like I said, they insisted it be a memoir. Kanishka Gupta, my agent, and a few other editors before we settled on Bloomsbury, they had all said that because the healing part is so not there, it would be very powerful. Here's a real person. Um, and that's what's happening in the West. We are seeing more and more memoirs. There's something fascinating to know that there's a real person. Look at our obsession with reality TV. There's real people versus something fictional that has its own charm. And also, so many of them get made into movies. My US agent, one of her authors, she went kayaking as a woman in the Amazon River alone. I think alone. So that book is called Amazon Woman. That would be a fantastic adventure movie to watch. So I think the way the industry works here, they actually want more memoirs. We're seeing a lot of Black Lives Matter kind of memoirs, as Michelle Harper's A Beauty in Breaking, which has been nominated for awards in the same category as Barack Obama's. I'm forgetting his name. I don't read those books. Sorry, I try to read people we haven't heard of. So So the reason is because there's real stories and our lives are really mixing up with news. And I think it's a matter of time before it comes to India because it's such a suppressed society. It is so deeply patriarchal for all the goddesses we worship. I mean, it's, how terribly we treat our women. So as we open up more, so for example, it's, gay stories are coming out. Um, I don't know how much society is still accepting them, and all of these things, what they do is they encourage more and more people to talk. The fact that there is another book, I mentioned Manjiri Durkar's book, which is quite different, but it's also on abuse and how she's managing to live. And then there's somebody else, I think Harisha. Yes, the fact that these are coming out, it's just the start. I think there will be more and more memoirs because people want to connect, and they're like, we're in an age where everyone wants to see the author rather than read it, and it kind of really ties in, this is the same person. So I think psychologically we're getting there and people are getting bolder. Will society accept it? I don't know. I saw that with my last celebrity memoir. He was so candid. The book did him no favors. It wasn't a PR stunt. Anybody who read it was, but was Indian society ready for candor? I'm not so sure. But I also see it moving. So hopefully we'll
But
get there.
there's also a sense of fear about reading, you know,
Yes.
news story, but it's for people to watch it on television or watch it via a movie.
Mm.
They're fairly more relaxed about it. But since reading is a little more intimate, uh, people are scared to actually read such books.
Yeah, you nailed it. Reading is probably the most intimate you can get compared to just watching. And there have been two editors who said, "We are so sorry, we cannot review this." Did I mention this already? Sorry if I did. But they were like, "We cannot because it's going to be about abuse and all of that." And I'm like, "You can read Toni Morrison, you can read Alice Walker, you can read all of these." Very, very painful books by African American, women. We even studied them in college. You can watch Mirzapur and every, whatever the darker movies that Anurag Kashyap has made, and but you cannot. But this is a judgment because this is also not what the book is. And
Yeah,
there was a review recently which actually said it that she reviewed both the other book I mentioned, It's All in My Head, and The Water Phoenix together, saying she was afraid to open both because it's quarantine and we are all avoiding all these dystopian things. But she was quite surprised by both. And this book, I mean, my kid helped me because he's so interfering. He was 6 years old. He said abuse is a spelling mistake. It's about, and so I had a different draft because I had to work with him around. So a lot of it, so all the animal parts, were okay for a 6-year-old. So
yeah.
we just have to be more open-minded and also open-hearted. We just um, need to not just judge something by our judgment. I mean, I can't even say don't judge a book by the cover because this cover is so brilliant, so
Beautiful.
beautiful. The artist Jezil Nathan has done such a great job. But we just need to be more open because how else will we heal as a society? Because this book is as much about emotional abuse. So
Speaking of healing, do you want to share your experience and to anybody watching right now who's undergone a similar trauma? How did healing come to you, or how did you get that courage to actually pick yourself up? Because what I feel like in certain situations, you know, uh, the victim really doesn't know how to take a step forward or, even help himself or herself. So, can you share your experience?
absolutely. So I'm just going to go to the last part that you mentioned. The first thing a victim should do is try to reach out for all the help they can. And I think Indian society has changed a lot. I remember when I used to try to tell some friends, um, and they said, "Oh, she just wants attention." That was like a punch on the nose. Is that why I have finally felt safe enough to share by the time I'm in my 20s? And then, but that again taught me I don't want these people in my life. I am so self-sufficient, like you mentioned, emotionally. I don't think I really need anybody. So the people I let in, bloody be worth it. Sorry to use that, because it has been so hard won. That's a radical act of self-love because it takes a lot to let people go because you do have bonds with them. You're not letting somebody you hate go.
Right.
um, And that's that's the tough warrior aspect of it, I think. So when you are what helped me was I had gotten so like the panic attacks got so bad. I almost lost my mind. I thought I'm going insane. And there is a point between voice of reason and voices and seeing things and border more than borderline schizophrenia. I would say there were symptoms that started coming in because I had suppressed so much. And as you saw, it was repetitive abuse. It was also very deep isolation.
Yeah.
And towards, I think, honestly, only towards the last few years of my college years, did I manage to have some, really close friends. It's also nothing wrong with the people. It's how are you, it's like a match in every way. How are you positioned? And that started helping me heal. Then I had, a fabulous boss in my Bombay office. Not so fabulous when I moved to Delhi, but and all of these things, I started having people who were caring,
Yeah.
and some of them even called me Choti. I think because I behaved like such a child because I raised myself and I did not. So I tended to be more gullible, more naive. And then the person I'm married to today, my husband, was my best friend back then, and much later did we start dating and all of that. For some years we were just friends. So all of that helped me heal. So when I say love helped me heal, it's literal because I did not know how to love myself, and society teaches us how to hate ourselves. And Osho says that, I think, forget about the business of love. Just focus on hating because at least the hatred will be pure. Humans don't know how to love. So so that was when it started. And then when I was losing my mind once again, I was back to that same kid who
Yeah.
nobody understood what was going on. It would have been very easy to go to a therapist and take medication, which we see in America. Everybody's on a ton of medication. But luckily, I'm really lucky. I didn't go down that route for me.
Okay.
I understand it's necessary for others and it will work for them. But I think if you see the journey of the book, that might not have worked for me because the only thing I had was my intuition, my inner voice, my imagination, connecting myself to nature, all of those things. So if even those were gone, I had no tools left. So then when this, the hearing voices, seeing things, when all of that got, because I was very logical, I was a hardcore atheist. I had no faith in anything. I was a faithless. I think then slowly, I mean, I'm trying to really mellow it down, but I pretty much almost went mad. And somehow I found my way to a yoga teacher. I was just starting to open up into my body, to a yoga studio in Mountain View, where I was at then, still in the Bay Area, still in Silicon Valley. And I don't know, I just opened up to her, and she just knew a lot of things without me saying it. And she gave me a meditation
Right.
to do, visualizations to focus on. And I think because I was so open anyway, this means I was open to all negative energy, but also I was equally open to positive energy because that's less conditioning. And that was my beginning. Then I started watching the thoughts, knowing this is not my reality. If I'm seeing and hearing and feeling things that don't exist, that means the reality is not solid at all. And we get into quantum physics to the atomic level. We get into, the double slit experiment, and Schrodinger's cat who is dead and alive at the same time. And all that appealed to me because I was interviewing scientists anyway. And then a lot changed. My whole world fell apart. A job I was supposed to have didn't work out. A book I had done a lot of research on didn't happen. I could no longer, I had to abandon my career. I couldn't bring myself to interview scientists anymore. So I had to really, really hit rock bottom, below rock bottom, if you will. I really got burnt in every way when everyone thought things were very stable. What triggered it the most was my postpartum depression. My kid was just a baby then. So, and then he helped me heal because he didn't know. He's just an infant and a baby, and it's all there in the book. He was just, just be there. He's not judging. This is good. This is bad. I could cry in front of him. I could break down in front of him. I couldn't do that. He's not trying to analyze it, to fix it, and I think that gave me a lot of space. So that was the beginning. And then I found my way to forgiveness of myself. It's not about the abuser. And that's what the book says. You cannot force yourself to forgive. That self hate. That's the worst thing you can do to yourself. it's about yourself. And if you say that little hope on a prayer, it's an atheist prayer. There's no concept of God. I still don't relate to any organized religion. I'm not anti anything. Everybody, whatever helps anybody get through the day, great. But that was how it happened. And in the end, it was forgiveness. It was realizing that I am not my story, and life is a blank canvas. Every minute you can paint something new. So live life as art, because we are all pieces of art. We're all masterpieces.
Wow, that's beautiful. And I think
Thank
healing and forgiveness are by far the most beautiful chapters in the book, because there's
you.
so much reality and depth that comes out. Also shows, you talk about hallucinations, you talk about finding yourself at the end of it. You also talk about, as you said, the small prayer that you tell yourself to forgive somebody. And it takes so much courage to actually address such a thing and forgive somebody who's really hurt you. So I felt like these are really liberating chapters, and
Thank you.
it just ties the book together.
Thank you. Thank you. That means so much. And the forgiveness prayer is also something called metta. Metta is a meditation in Buddhism, in which you can look it up on YouTube. I haven't done it in a while. Um, but it's the same thing. You send love to yourself, you send love to the planet, you send love to someone you care about, and you send love to someone you absolutely hate and cannot stand. If you're really open about it, things transform instantly. And like it says in the forgiveness chapter, and the freedom, the whole part, the last few chapters, it's got nothing to do with the person. You're setting yourself free. That doesn't mean what they did is okay. But if my reality is not my reality, then if I am disassociating from my story, can I not disassociate them from their story? And that can only happen when the person has died or you are physically away. um, and then you're literally like cutting it from the root. uh, and I honestly haven't seen anything else work. I have seen people be in therapy for decades. I've seen people be on medication for their whole lives at some point. And it's great, it's helping them get through. It's important to have that help, but at some point we have to take ownership. And coming from somebody who's been an atheist her whole life, I'm sorry, the answers do lie in the mystical and the spiritual realms. And for me, writing, I also paint, all of them are very spiritual processes. To me, it's the same as worship. And yeah, so that's what is healing, being present, basically.
Wow. Rituparna, I must say this conversation and this book has it hasn't changed my life, but it has definitely impacted me to look at life with a different perspective. When I'm
Thank you.
seeing children around me, I feel like I've become more sensitive to people and things. I can say things as well, because we don't really pay attention to plants, animals,
Mhm.
beings around us. We're more I can say we're a little selfish, that we only care about ourselves. So, this has been such a sensitive read, and it's been so beautiful that it's changed my perspective to look at things more gently, be more empathetic to people and beings around me. And that's all thanks to you.
Thank you. You're very sweet. Thank you. And that's one of the reasons. Once I finished the book, I felt we need to be more gentle. Gentleness is strength.
Right.
And that's what it is, a line there. What it takes to survive a storm is to not fight it, but to let it take you.
Absolutely. To
Thank you.
everyone watching, please buy this book, The Water Phoenix. You can buy this at any Sapna Book House store. You could also order it online at Sapna Online. But please do grab your copy, and you must really read this book.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much for your time, and thank you so much for sharing such a lovely part of your life with all of us.
Thank you, Natasha. It's been an absolute delight. And I am so touched by all the nuances that you found in it. And I really hope more people come to Sapna Bookstore. We are so loyal to independent booksellers in America, because it's just, we all work in partnership as writers. And I hope more people just, and you're online. I wish they would, come to independent bookstores like yours rather than just ordering from Amazon. Especially since you're online, it makes it very convenient. Thank you. Thank you. I cannot wait to come and visit your store next time I'm in Bangalore. And everyone I know loves it. They have so many great memories. So it's been a delight. Thank you.
Can't wait to speak to you in person, and hopefully that'll happen soon.
I hope so too. I can't wait either.
So, all the
Thank you.
best for everything you do, and all the best for the book.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye. Take care.